y'all know how these red buttons supposed to be down or up?
Down. It'll light up. Lightly lit up.
Okay. All right. We're good. Here we go. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting, the Peace River, Manasota Water Supply Authority, to order. It's October the 4th, 2023, approximately 9:31 a.m. We have our board members with us today are myself, Commissioner Langford, Commissioner Daugherty from Charlotte, Commissioner Cruz from Manatee, and Commissioner Moran from Sarasota. At this time, if y'all would, let's rise for the invocation followed by the pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning, Lord. We just want to lift up our men and women that protect us and serve us, our military, our law enforcement, our 911 responders, Lord. We just lift them up to you as they're always putting themselves in harm's way for us to protect us, Lord. And we just want to lift them up to you and ask that you keep your hand of protection upon them. Lord, we lift up this rain that you've been sending us. It's been kind of dry, and we appreciate the water that you've been sending our way, dear Heavenly Father. Lord, we just also want to lift up those that are ailing and sick. Lord, I know that every one of us in this room has somebody that we know that has an illness or a sickness or something going on in their life, Lord, and we just lift that up to you and pray that you just heal them and make them feel better, Lord. Give them comfort and peace. Lord, we just thank you for all that. We ask all these things now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Flag's on the right. Dear, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our deal is welcome our guest. I don't have anything in front of me, but we do have a former member of this board that's with us today, Mr. Alameo. He said he didn't want nobody to point him out or pick him out or whatever, so he's in the back row. If y'all hear somebody snoring, let me know, and we'll wake him up. At this time, is Jonathan here? Jonathan Lewis? Oh.
Good morning. I am not Jonathan Lewis.
No, sir.
I will clear that up right now, and I apologize for not being him. Brad Johnson, I'm one of the assistant county administrators here in Sarasota County. Jonathan is traveling back from a conference and sends his regards and asked me to fill in for him, so you're stuck with me. But certainly want to welcome you to Sarasota County. We greatly appreciate the partnership with the member counties and also the authority as a whole and all the benefits that both our organization and our community reap from this relationship. So welcome. We hope you have a great meeting today and enjoy Sarasota County.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
All right. Public comments. Anybody from the public wish to address the board or got anything to say? Going once, going twice? All right. Consent agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Daugherty, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Regular agenda. Be Mr. Richard.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. Richard Anderson of your staff. I think you just set a record for the fastest time to the item 1 this morning.
Can I catch you off guard?
Yes, sir, you did. There we go. And as usual, water supply conditions is item 1. This is an information item only. We're going to take a look at the water supply conditions down at the water plant for September, and then your demands for the month of August. Rainfall, as you mentioned, has been somewhat scarce this rainy season. Through the middle of September, we actually only had 3 inches of rain, and that's usually, as you can see, one of our bigger months for rain. We usually average about 7.5, 7.7 inches of rain. We did recover slightly, and we wound up at about 6.6 inches, so not quite to the average, but almost average rainfall in the basin. We have been fortunate this year. I know we haven't been getting a lot of rain on the coast, but we have been getting it where we need it in the basin to keep the river flowing and to take water off the river, as you'll see. So all in all, we've been pretty fortunate for having a dry season this year. As you can see, the river flows. Finally, we got a pop here in the river flows. We're right now, as of the 17th, we were at just over 4,000 CFS. And right now, we're just under that, about 3,900 CFS in the river, which gives us plenty of water to take. And that should push us through at least the month of November with water available to pump. So we're still looking pretty good, and hopefully we can have a wet winter is what they're calling for, but no guarantees. Looking at the river withdrawals, so you can see we were able to pump water. We averaged about 60 MGD for June, July, and August. We got the reservoir full in early September, and we were able to back down the flows, and we've been averaging about 35 MGD pull through the end of the month here into October. Surface water storage, as you can see, we are full. We're right at about 6.4 billion gallons in the surface water system. So got it topped off just in time as the rainy season stopped. And as you look at the ASR system, earlier this year we took out about 400 million gallons out of the system. We've been in storage mode now for about 6 months, from about May through September. We did just start augmenting the ASR system, recharging it about 2 weeks ago, and we're sitting right now at about 8.5 billion gallons in the system. Usable volumes right at 5 billion gallons right now. And if you combine the surface water supplies and the ASR, we have about 400 days of storage between those two systems. If you look at our average daily flow, if you look at our contractual quantity of 34.7, we have about 328 days, which is about 11 months of storage in the system. Yes, sir.
Richard, I just have a question. I think I've asked it in the past, but I just don't recall. The ASR volumes that you're using in these time projections, is it the usable or the total? Do you know?
On this slide, it's the usable.
Usable, perfect.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. Okay, now we'll take a look at the production for the month of August, as I mentioned. Flows were very high in August and in September. I don't have the September final numbers yet, but they were very high as well. Authority system used 32.2. Your county and city facilities used almost 52, 51.7. Total of almost 84 MGD for September, or for August rather, I'm sorry. Which again is typically supposed to be one of our lower flow months because of the rain. So seeing very high demands in August. 3.3 of that went to the consecutive customers for Manatee County, leaving total usage of about 80.6 for the authority members and customers. For Charlotte County system used 11.7 from the authority. Burnt Store produced about 0.7. Total usage of 12.4 for the month, which is 64% of your total capacity. As you can see, if you look down at the chart below, through the water year 22, you were 12.3 average, and through the last 12-month running average, you're up about 500,000 gallons average, 12.8, 12.9 MGD on the running average. For DeSoto County, used 0.79 from the authority and 0.3 roughly from the correctional facility. Total usage of 1.13. And again, 12-month running average is slightly ticked up for the county, 103 versus 107 on the running average. Looking at Manatee County, Manatee produced 40.5, or we used 40.5 within your system. 3.6 of that went to Sarasota County. Another 3.3 went to your consecutives. So the total produced at the Manatee water plant was 47.5 roughly. Again, looking at the annual average usage, last year 37.01, Had a pretty substantial jump between then and the 12-month running average now of almost 2.5 MGD. So pretty good jump there on the Manatee County numbers. Sarasota County, excuse me. Sarasota used 19.6 from the authority. Now this is related to the construction work that's going on at the facility. That work has recently been completed, so these numbers are going to go down dramatically. They've got the plant back online and they're producing water now, so they've been able to reduce what they've been taking from the authority. But they imported 3.7 from Manatee County and a little bit from Northport. Didn't produce any water, of course, because of the work going on at the county. Total usage was 23.3 for the month. Again, looking at last year's number, 22.01 compared to the 12-month running average now. Again, a jump of 1.8 MGD, so a pretty substantial jump in demands between year-to-year numbers. City of Northport. Northport took a little bit of water in August, but this is typically the time of year that they rely heavily on their facility because they have surface water available to treat. So took 0.09 from the authority, 3.2 self-supplied, and they produced about 50,000 gallons a day that they supplied to Sarasota County. So total usage was 3.2. They're the only utility that dropped, actually, looking at their last year number, 385, compared to this year. They've gone down about 400,000 gallons a year on the average. And when you take a look at the regional supply, this is all those numbers summed up. Last year, we were 79.5 MGD running average. Through this year, we're up about 4 MGD, 85.82, which is about a 5% jump in 1 year, year to year, looking at the numbers. So pretty substantial jump in demands. And looking at the regional utilization, this is just for August. Again, we have 107.5 available, and that does include the new RO facility, Welland Park, over that Northport's operating. Total produced was 83.95, leaving us with 23.5 MGD, or 78% utilization for the month. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Board members, y'all have any questions, Mr. Anderson? Okay. Hear none.
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Agenda item number 2, Ms. Holcomb.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Terry Holcomb with authority staff, good morning. Regular item number 2, the PR3 work order number 3 for final design and permitting is an action item, and there will be a motion at the end of this presentation for board consideration and approval. We'll go all the way back to the beginning. So we'll begin this morning's presentation with a brief project update through the preliminary design phase services. We'll move on to the review of the proposed delivery methods for the construction of the PR3 project, take a look at the consultant's proposed scope and fee for final design services, review the funding grant opportunities that we've secured to date, and then close with the proposed delivery schedule and presentation of the board action. So the preliminary design phase really had 3 key deliverables for the consultant, and that consisted of the completion of the 30% design documents, including the plans and specifications, the submittal of the associated environmental resources permit application, and completion of the third-party review as a requirement of the cooperative funding agreement with the Southwest Florida Water Management District. So in regards to the 30% design documents, the authority received those documents in March of this year, And they consisted of a basis of design report, which looked at all of the technical design aspects of the project, as well as the spatial configurations of all of the project components. There were also 4 separate design volumes that were submitted. Design Volume 1 consisted of the reservoir design plans. Volume 2 was the river intake and pump station. Volume 3 was the reservoir pump station. And then Design Volume 4 was all of the conveyance piping that connected the new infrastructure to the authority's existing assets. The project components were broken up into these specific design volumes for ease of construction. When the contractors begin to bid and construct the projects, we wanted to make sure that there was clear demarcation between where certain components started and ended. So if you had a prime contractor that was working on the pump stations and they had a sub that was working on the pipelines, they knew exactly where the extent of their construction limits began and ended. In addition, the design documents also contained a technical memorandum that addressed construction considerations, the updated cost estimates, and a delivery schedule. With respect to the permitting requirement, the consultant looked at the wetland impacts. They quantified those, identified them by the type, the basin they were in, and the actual functional loss associated with those impacts. They identified potential mitigation options, and that included the purchase of bank credits or the possibility of construction of on-site permittee responsible mitigation, or a combination of the two of those. They also prepared several documents addressing the threatened and endangered species surveys that were conducted due to the impacts on the project components. And they outlined all of the pre-application meetings and discussions that they had with all of the regulatory agencies, including the Army Corps of Engineers, FDEP, the Water Management District. And we actually submitted the environmental resources permit September 15th last month. The third-party review is a requirement of the cooperative funding agreement that we had with the Water Management District for the preliminary design services, and the Water Management District secured Black & Veatch as their independent third-party reviewer of the design documents. So the reviewer looks at the appropriateness of the design assumptions and the approach, conformance with industry design standards, constructability assumptions, and the means and methods that were used to determine those constructability assumptions, the appropriateness of the basis of the cost estimate, and the schedule. And the independent reviewer found that there was general concurrence with the design assumptions and the approach that was used, as well as the cost estimates were within industry standards for 30% design. So I'm happy to say that the third-party review recommendation went to the board, the Water Management Board, in August, and they approved the continuation onto the final design and construction of the PR3 project with a funding amount of $115.7 million for the PR3 project. So moving on to the proposed delivery methods. When we talk about the delivery methods, we're discussing how are we going to deliver the design and the construction services through a procurement strategy. So looking at the 4 key components of the PR3 project, reservoir, pump stations, and pipelines, we noticed that the costs for the pump stations and the pipelines, they're primarily driven by the materials of construction, the timing in the marketplace when you're purchasing those materials, and the construction methods that are used to install them. Kind of drives that price. The reservoir is really, that price is driven by the contractor that's working on that reservoir, that bids that project, their experience with their labor utilization, and just prior experience with constructing the large infrastructure. So staff, our owner's agent, and the consultant, we all talked about the benefits of using the construction management at-risk delivery method for the pump stations and the conveyance pipelines. That's where we felt we would get the most value added in the design aspects. We can have the contractor and the design engineer working together to determine the materials of construction, look at timing in the marketplace when we purchase those materials so that we ensure that we're getting the best price. CMAR for those components, and then the reservoir, it's a lot of earth movement, not a lot of materials, mechanical equipment, we're moving dirt, not a lot of cost savings there. So we felt the best value would be to go out for a hard bid, get the competition in the market between the reservoir builders. So we have two different delivery methods proposed, getting a CMAR on board for the delivery of the pump stations and the pipelines, and going out for a hard bid for the construction of the reservoir. And just kind of wanted to show how that's seen in the price difference between the 15% cost estimate at design and the 30% design cost estimate. You can see that we really did recognize some cost savings between the 15 and 30% with the pump stations and pipelines, because that's where we were able to collaborate with the design engineer and identify value engineering options, take out some of the materials, the piping that we would have loved to have for flexibility, but we didn't need to have to deliver the project. So you can see the cost savings there. It gives us an opportunity to really bring in the contractor for that early contractor involvement phase, look at some of the constructability reviews, and also identify those early procurement items, those long lead items that we're going to have. So we really are focusing on the pump stations and pipelines under the CMAR contract. And again, the reservoir, we didn't really see a lot of value engineering during the 15 to 30%. So it kind of just bolsters that decision to move forward with those two delivery methods. Looking at the consultant's proposed scope and fee for the final design services, there are 7 key task components with the final design scope. And you can see here, I wanted to just kind of run through some of the key ones. The geotechnical work that's in the final design builds off of what was done during the preliminary design. We need to do some additional foundational explorations related to the reservoir, the pump stations, and the intake station. The environmental and permitting side of it, we need to continue on. We just submitted the ERP. We anticipate getting some requests for some additional information. We need to continue with the threatened and endangered species reviews. And then you'll see items 4, 5, and 6. That kind of walks us through the final design phases. And we're going to have 2 concurrent designs going on. We're going to have the CMAR design for those 3 volumes, the pump stations and the pipelines with the CMAR going through the 60 and the 90% with our CMAR working together, while concurrently the design engineer is working on 100% designs for the reservoir. So 4, 5, and 6 are those different design milestones. The RTA is the ready to advertise package. That will be for the reservoir under item number 6. And then item 7 is the emergency action plan that is associated with the reservoir. That is a requirement of the permit to have that. And you can see that we have a total fee of $8,408,449 for the final design fee. Just taking a real quick look at our funding opportunities, grants to date. Along the top here, you can see we've got the Resilient Florida Grant Program, the Swift Mud Cooperative Funding, and the state appropriation funds identified that we have secured and received to date. Looking at the final design, estimating about $8.5 million for final design services. We have a $7.5 million grant from the Resilient Florida Grant Program, and with $1 million from the Swift Mud Cooperative Funding Program, the costs for the final design would be zero to our customers. It's covered through those grants. Just wanted to mention that Swift Mud reimburses, so we will expend those $1 million first, and then they will reimburse as we move through the project. Moving on to that early contractor involvement, that first phase, first package from the CMAR, we're estimating about $3 million. Hopefully, we'll have a presentation later in today's agenda with approval of our CMAR, and we can work on that price for that first package. Right now, $3 million, again, being covered wholly by the Southwest Florida Water Management District's grant. And then construction of those pipelines and pump stations, We've got about another $71 million in total grant funding. That's the Swift Mud Cooperative funding with the $10 million that we received from the state appropriation, with an estimated cost of about $123.5 million. That leaves the customer share at $52.5 million for the volumes 2, 3, and 4 construction. And then the reservoir construction, we have a balance left of the Swift Mud Cooperative funding of about $50.7 million. It's estimated right now to cost about $216 million. So we've got a customer share there of about $165.3. There on the bottom, you'll see the total estimated cost of the PR3 project at $351 million, with grant funding secured at $133.2. That leaves the customer share at about $217.8. I also want to note that this is not the end of our grant funding. We are continuing to submit applications. We've submitted an application for the Resilient Florida program for FY25 year in the amount of $20 million. And we also will be traveling up to Tallahassee and meeting with legislators to request additional funding through the appropriations as well. So we're continuing to request through the next 2 to 3 years for additional funding. So hopefully we'll come back with numbers to add. I also wanted to point out that the preliminary design and final design fees, when you add them together, equate to about 4.8% of the total construction cost. And then in closing, we want to take a look at the delivery schedule. With the submittal of the ERP application, that concluded the preliminary design phase deliverables that were required. That happened in September. We're moving on with the board's approval today with the final design, hopefully beginning this month. It's about a 15-month schedule, concluding in 2024. We'd like to bring that CMAR on board in December to begin working with the engineer through that final design phase on those 3 components. Bring them on board in December, get that early contractor involvement, some of those cost certainties nailed down. We've got the contractor that's going to be building it, giving us those cost estimates. And then bringing on that reservoir contractor in January of 2025 after the 100% plans are complete, and construction going through summer of 2027, bringing the reservoir online so that we can begin filling it. The additional components will be completed by early 2028 so that we can send water back to the treatment plant and begin delivering water to our customers. So with that, I would like to present the motion to approve and authorize the executive director to execute work order number 3 for the Peace River Regional Reservoir PR3 project final design and permitting in the amount of $8,408,449. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Daughtry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a request first, I guess, and then I'll make the motion. No problem. But I'd be curious if sometime over the next 60 days or so I could have a meeting just to sit down and see how we're going to sequence these 2 delivery systems relative to the interfacing of the conveyance piping with the reservoir earthwork operations. Who's going in first? Who's going to get their stuff done? So especially on the hard bid, to make sure there's no possible change order type things that could come up on that, Terry. That's all. It's part of what you're working on right now, I'm sure, the sequencing. I'd just like to see what your plans are on that.
Of course, we will be happy to set up that meeting.
Thank you. And, Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of regular agenda item number 2 as recommended by staff.
Okay. All right, have a motion by Commissioner Daughtry, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Terry.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 3 brings us Mr. Mike Knowles.
There you go.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, members of the board. Mike Knowles with Authority staff presenting regular agenda item number 3. This is the contractor selection of the Peace River Regional Reservoir number 3 construction management at risk contract. There will be a motion at the end of this presentation. For the agenda today, I'll recap briefly what Terry's already covered on the proposed delivery methods for PR3. talk about the solicitation that went out for the CMAR contract and the recommendations from staff from the selection committee. Talk about the schedule of items coming to the board before going to the motion. So as Terry did cover in detail, just to reiterate that the CMAR is only performing construction related to PR3, related to the reservoir pump station, river intake pump station, and the large diameter pipes going from those pump stations to connect to authority infrastructure. The solicitation was advertised June 30th, and the authority was very happy to receive 4 submittals on August 17th from Archer Western, PCL, Garney, and Hewitt. Our Professional Services Evaluation Committee met on August 29th to shortlist based on qualifications, and all 4 firms were recommended to move forward to the second stage of the evaluation, and that was the technical presentation. Would like to thank Charlotte County for volunteering staff to participate on our selection committee. One of your PMs from operations, Johnny Chamberlain, was volunteered, so he was pulling double duty with our group and then running back to your EOC for the hurricane prep. So appreciate that. September 12th, the selection committee met back again to do the second stage technical presentations. The contractors presented on their schedule for meeting the authority milestones, innovative ideas for the project, and their general approach to the CMAR. After those presentations, Archer Western was ranked first and is the recommendation from this committee. Bob Bruner is the main point of contact and project director for Archer Western. He is a professional engineer. He's Envision certified, and he's Design Build Institute of America certified. And he is one of the smiling faces in the crowd today. As you could tell from the salt and pepper on Bob, he has over 30 years in the construction industry, and he's completed over 100 collaborative delivery projects. Well, Bob's a standout for Archer Western. The company itself is exactly what we need for this project. They have experience with CMAR projects on large pump stations, river intake construction, and large diameter pipe installation. They also have a good working relationship with the engineers on this project, which we know ourselves, and I've heard from this board, having that relationship between the engineer and the contractor is vital on alternative delivery projects, including having completed 50 projects with HDR throughout the U.S., who's our engineer of record for PR3, and over 300 projects with Hazen, who's a primary sub for HDR in that project, and then over 300 projects with Brown & Caldwell, who's the authority's owner's agent. And again, as Terry pointed out, the first package that we would propose to the board would be projected at no cost to the customers, as it would be covered by grant funding. So if the recommendation from the selection committee is approved today, we would bring back to the board our first package for early contractor involvement, December of this year. And that would include the contractor's review of engineers' estimates to produce their own rough order of magnitude construction cost estimates. And those would be done by April of 2024. Before we go to the motion, I'd be happy to entertain any questions the board has.
Board members, you have any questions? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of regular agenda item number 3 as recommended.
Okay. Got a motion by Commissioner Daugherty, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 4. Mike, you up again?
I am. All right. Ready? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just for the record, Mike Knowles, Authority staff, presenting regular agenda item number 4. This is the Regional Water Treatment Plant Expansion Project Update. I'll be covering the design criteria package recently completed by Brown & Caldwell, talk about the timeline for the project, and then I am co-presenting with Mike Condren, who is the lead from our owner's agent, Brown & Caldwell, and he'll be covering our pilot study that was completed, the background of that, the overview, the scenarios they modeled, the overall schedule for that pilot study, and then the conclusions and recommendations. After we cover Mike's presentation, Brown & Caldwell has prepared a short video commemorating the end of the pilot study that we'd like to play for the board. So the design criteria package that Brown & Caldwell just completed, this really touched on every faucet that we're going to need for the water treatment plant expansion, including items like collecting data for site survey, soil conditions, subsurface utility exploration. They also looked at the treatment methodology, the chemical requirements, performance requirements of the equipment, site constraints, performed preliminary permit application meetings with the agencies we need to go through. And the main bulk of it was really looking at pilot testing equipment to look at not only how the equipment operated with the authority's water source, but also to project the long-term operation and maintenance cost of implementing those technologies. So the design criteria package they completed is really beneficial to the authority for a number of reasons. One of them is, as you might remember last year, the Water Management District changed the application process for cooperative funding, where you have to have your preliminary design complete and then a third-party review completed before that application can be sent in. So I'm happy to say that Brian Caldwell completed that preliminary design, and one of our third-party as-needed engineers, Wade Trim, completed the third-party review in time to make that submittal, which is this Friday. The design criteria package also allows for multiple procurement options for the authority. We can go traditional design bid build, or we can use that design criteria package and go out for alternative delivery on the water plant. And I think the real benefit to the DCP is to try out that technology. So again, Mike's going to go into some more detail on the pilot study and the results and recommendations, and I will turn it over. Oh, I will not. Hold on one second. The envision for this project, if the surface water supply project moves forward after today's information-only presentation, the next item we'd see coming back to the board would be the approval of alternative delivery contract for this water plant December of 2024. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Condrey.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Mike Condren with Brown and Caldwell here to go over the results of our pilot study, and we've got some good news from all of the work that's been done since we started in February of this year. Going back about a year, last year the authority had completed a facility capacity optimization study, and what you did with your consultant at the time is look at a number of factors here, the cost of course being very important, and then a number of non-cost factors that were important to the authority. And that process resulted in looking at a full range of alternatives. I think there were about 10 or 12, but the ranking that was performed in that 2022 optimization study resulted in looking at a new treatment train to be added to the Peace River facility that would include a new technology that's not been used at the Peace River facility before, which includes plate settlers, and then also the idea of membrane filtration for finished water production as opposed to the granular media filters that the PRF is currently using. So the benefits of that top rank alternative, and this came out in that 22 report, was that the project could be constructed in phases, so only capacity when needed. We are looking at this as a 24 MGD expansion, but the flexibility of this treatment approach allows for modular expansion. If you only wanted to increase, say, 12 MGD and then finish it with another 12 MGD later, that can be accommodated. This process that was envisioned could be operated with a high turndown ratio, which gives the Richard staff at the authority a lot of operational flexibility when running the plant day to day. Another key benefit is that it provides a smaller footprint than the existing technology that's used at the PRF, basically saving in construction costs. It considers potential future regulatory requirements that may be coming down the road, so we did take a look at that as part of the pilot work. And then, of course, it's a greenfield construction, so all that construction would be done separate from the day-to-day operations and not have, it would have limited impact on day-to-day facility operations. So the objectives that led to the 2023 pilot study, and we began planning this work last year, about this time last year, and the idea was to identify technologies where we could validate their performance and then make a recommendation for final selection. Also, it verifies that the water quality needs for the Peace River raw water supply could be met with the treatment techniques that we're examining. And then, of course, it provides a way to optimize the process design, and then most importantly, help us develop design criteria document that went into the cooperative funding initiative application that Mike mentioned is going in this week. So what came out of, before we initiated any work out at doing the pilot work, we identified 4 alternatives that were going to be examined. The first alternative being the powdered activated carbon process that the PRF currently uses, followed by plate settlers and then membrane filtration. The second alternative was the same pack treatment with plate settlers, and then just like your current facility uses are these GMF or granular media filtration structures for finished water production. The third alternative was the plate settlers coupled with membrane filtration and then with granular activated carbon. And this was an important consideration because the authority uses quite a bit of powdered activated carbon, so what we wanted to do is look at is there a way to maybe reduce some of the operational costs of the powdered activated carbon that's currently being used. And then the fourth alternative was the pack with the solids contact clarifiers that the PRF currently uses with your conventional granular media filtration. So let's take a look at what the pilot system results revealed and then what the recommendations are. So we looked at, there were 2 phases of work. The first phase of work that we began last February at the February board meeting, as a matter of fact, that week is when we mobilized all the equipment. And what we were doing is we were piloting up till about the 1st of June. That whole phase was looking at taking the raw water and feeding it with the powdered activated carbon that you currently use and the caustic feed. And then we examined the plate settler operation throughout the duration of the entire plant or entire pilot operation. We looked at 2 different types of membrane filters, a polymeric-based membrane and a ceramic-based membrane. And then the second phase, which lasted from the beginning of June till about mid-July when we demobilized the equipment, we added a look at granular activated carbon just to examine was that a more cost-effective technique for removing some of the chemical compounds, the taste and odor compounds, if you will, that are important to the authority and for which you're using a lot of PAC. So the pilot scenarios and schedule, as I mentioned, we started things up in early February, and we wanted to, and we were collaborating with Richard and his staff as to when we were going to begin. And so this was a very purposeful choice, beginning in February and then ending in July, because what we had to do is we had to find a way that we could examine these technologies when the water quality we knew was going to shift, because you do see every year about the April-May timeframe, you see a change in the water quality that comes to the plant. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to examine that challenging condition on the technology. So we shouldered that on the front and back end of it to cover that water quality change that in fact we did see in late April. So what are the results and the takeaways? The key results are that all the technologies met the treatment target goals. So that's great news. The plate settlers worked, the membrane filters worked, the activated carbon worked, much as we suspected, but we weren't sure how that was actually going to play out. But what we noticed was that the inclined plate settlers have a similar performance, very similar to your existing PRF solids contact units, but with a much smaller footprint. And what that means for you is savings in capital construction costs. So what these inclined plate settlers look like is it allows you to compress the footprint by introducing the raw water influent that's fed with a chemical dosing in that first basin, and you flocculate all of the solids that you want to remove. And in that second chamber you see where these inclined plates, what they do is they help produce a much higher capacity of solids removal. So that allows you the opportunity to, again, compress the footprint. And the clarified water meets the same types of target that you see with your solids contact units. And this is a superimposition of what we expect the footprint of a 24 MGD plate settler basin to look like at about just over 11,000 square feet. And that compares to the authority's current solids contact units that are used at plants 3 and 4 at about 24,000 feet. So quite a bit smaller in size. And again, that's concrete, that's foundation work, that's the walls of the structures and so forth. And so it represents a pretty significant cost savings. So coming back to the results, what we also discovered with the membranes, that we were surprised actually, that the membranes did work and worked very well, but they didn't offer any significant benefit over the granular media filters that you use. So this was a key result for us, was to recognize that operationally they're a little bit more complex, but they didn't provide any real benefit over that conventional technology. But and we also revealed that the granular activated carbon was very effective at removing the taste and odor compounds, but compared to the costs associated with your current pack dosing, it did not represent an opportunity for any cost savings. So what we recommended was alternative 2, based on a number of non-cost factors, but the cost factor being perhaps the most important. As you can see here, that represented about a 7% savings over alternative number 1, which was the inclined plate settlers with the membranes. So the key takeaways from this entire analysis is that the authority will have saved time on the next PRF expansion, whether that goes out for advertisement next year or whenever that happens. This work has given you a jet-assisted takeoff, if you will, on finishing the detailed design and construction. We eliminated costlier technologies. We weren't sure, and now we answered that question, so that was very important. Very critical is that we met SwiftMud's very aggressive cooperative funding initiative application schedule. So we started this, again, about this time last year, but to get from there to preparing the design criteria document that's going into the district this week, that's a very tight schedule, so we were able to achieve that. And then we were able to verify that these are effective technologies, and we understand then how they will address potential future regulations. So with that concludes the presentation of the information, and if there's any questions, I'd be delighted to answer any questions.
Board members, you have any questions? Hear none, thank you.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
If we could, there's a 3-minute video we'd like to play,
Okay.
if there's time. Thank you.
The Peace River Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority is a regional water supplier to a 4-county region in Southwest Florida. We provide wholesale drinking water to these 4 counties to ensure that public health and safety needs are met, as well as the future needs for economic growth in the region.
We are standing at the Peace River Regional Water Supply Treatment Facility. This is plant number 2, which is the second plant of 4 different individual plants on the property. We can treat about 51 million gallons a day of drinking water, and we average about 30 million gallons of drinking water a day to the customers.
Since the authority's last expansion almost 15 years ago, the area has seen a significant amount of growth. To meet that growth, the authority is embarking on a surface water expansion program. And we're under a pilot study right now on the water treatment plant expansion to identify the appropriate technology to employ when we design that plant.
Brown & Caldwell's been collaborating for a little over a year now with the authority in an advisory capacity as part of a multi-year large capital improvement program. The authority was under a very aggressive schedule to complete grant funding application documents, and we were able to assemble and mobilize technical resources very quickly to put a pilot program into place with which we were able to run and collect all the necessary data and meet that very aggressive schedule.
The pilot facility consists of 3 different technologies. The first is an inclined plate settler. The second is a membrane filtration technology. We tested 2 different types of membranes. One is a polymeric membrane and one is a ceramic membrane. And the third technology is granular activated carbon. All three of them are potential like-to-like replacements for the facility's existing technologies.
Once we take samples from the pilot, we bring them into one of the in-house labs and we test for color, turbidity, and pH, and from that we can make real-time adjustments to run the pilot effectively. We ran the pilot study without interrupting the day-to-day operations of the water plant by pulling from the intake of the beginning of their process and running it through our pilot study and returning it back at the same location. We use less than 1% that comes through, so we're not making any impact on the quantity or the quality.
Through the pilot testing program, we were able to eliminate some of the technologies that were not going to work for our facility. That led us to choose technologies that were viable for our future growth.
This pilot study was successful because we were able to prove for each of these treatment technologies, they were able to achieve the water quality targets that the authority has set for the Peace River facility.
The pilot test program results are going to be instrumental in allowing Brown and Caldwell to compile design criteria documentation that in turn supports the grant funding application process for the authority.
The Peace River Facility Surface Water Expansion Project will provide up to an additional 18 million gallons per day of drinking water to our growing region. This water resource will help meet the needs in the region and economic growth while also being a reliable and sustainable resource.
Mr. Daugherty has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a thought came to mind. I saw watching the video. We said that the technologies will all meet future regulatory requirements. We had quite a presentation at the last authority meeting about PFAS. Will any of these technologies meet those requirements as well? They're coming down from EPA. I guess those thresholds are dropping dramatically.
Right. I know the granular activated carbon showed promise for treating PFAS, but I'll let Mike talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you.
That's exactly right. The GAC, we did look at it. It wasn't the primary focus of the reporting because we simply don't know where this is going. So the authority had been looking at those concentrations, and they're still below any regulatory limit anyways, but we did examine the GAC effectiveness, and it is very effective. So
excellent.
When the time comes, that could be an option.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Awesome video. I just have two questions. One is why Mr. Coates wasn't in this video, and two, when's it come out on Netflix? It was very nice. That was pretty neat. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. There we are. Okay. Mr. Guido, you're up. I'd already turned my page. I couldn't find 5. I already had it turned.
I did the same thing.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jim Guida, your Director of Water Resources and Planning. Today I'll be presenting regular agenda item 5 for the contract scope and fee with Carollo Engineers for our 2025 Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan. This is an action item, and we'll have a recommendation and motion at the end. So our Integrated Water Supply Plan, we undertake this every 5 years. It's our primary planning document. Our last one was completed in 2020. We try to sync this up with the Southwest Florida Water Management District's 5-year window for their regional water supply planning. Our topics, there's a wide variety of topics that we cover. It includes looking at the demands for the region, looking at opportunities to conserve water or to manage demands, looking at updating regional facilities for the region since the last report, looking at opportunities for expanding regional transmission pipelines and or regional interconnections, looking at what we might be able to do to leverage reclaimed water in the region further. Also, at the end, we come up with a prioritized list of potential projects, give you an idea of costs and potential timelines for each one of them, and make recommendations on improving the capital improvement program, And ultimately, that again is integrated with SwiftMud's 2025 plan. And our schedule is about a year and a half. We will be starting on this tomorrow. Milestones in selecting the contract are here. We advertised a statement of qualifications request for consultant services in May. We received the responses on June 22nd, and our selection committee met on June 29th. Their recommendation was to select Carollo Engineers. That was presented to you at the August board. And today we're coming forward with the contract and work order number 1 for the project. The key components of the work order are pretty much what I just described on the key elements of the plan, broken out by individual tasks here. As far as schedule and budget, again, breaking everything out by task, we get underway here in October. We complete the project in April with a total budget of $698,883, of which about $35,000 is owner's allowance in case there's some out-of-scope items that we need to have addressed. With that, I have a staff recommendation and motion. I can read this for you, or one of the board members can do that, whichever you'd prefer.
Go ahead and read it.
Okay. We have a motion to approve professional services contract with Carollo Engineers for the Peace River Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan 2025 and authorize the executive director to execute work order number 1 under that contract for an amount not to exceed $698,883.
Okay, board members have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move regular agenda item 5 as recommended by staff. I think, Jim, you said 698,301. If my hearing, I think that's what I heard, but it's 699,301, correct?
I'm sorry, there was a misprint in an earlier document. The right number is in front of you here, 698,883. Apologize if that's what's in your packet.
Yes, on the print. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, we're clear on that. 698,883.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
Do I hear a second? Okay, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. All right. Had a motion by Commissioner Daugherty, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Chairman's report. Under Chairman's report, we have our annual review of our executive director. I only have 2 evaluators forms that was turned back in, one by myself and one by Commissioner Cruz. Does any other commissioners have any discussion on our director? He passed with flying colors on 2 of us. So it's kind of the way I always figure if everything's going smooth, then there ain't really a whole lot to critique. So I think Mike's been doing a great job, filled in right in Pat's shoes and continued to keep everything going. Got a good staff still, I would like to recommend a 5% raise for Mr. Coates, but it's up to the board to help me out here. So anybody?
Mr. Chairman, obviously I didn't fill one out, but I have attended just about all the authority meetings, and I have had my pre-agenda meetings with Mr. Coates and staff periodically. Last year, I agree with you. I mean, he's doing an excellent job. The transition was smooth, and I would, if you need that in a motion, I'll make that motion that we accept the evaluation, positive evaluation with a adjustment in salary of 5%.
Okay, and that
I'll
would-
second that.
Okay, and that would be retroactive back to August. Is that okay with everybody still?
However, we've done it in the past.
Okay, yes, sir. That's the way it normally works. Okay, so I had a motion by Commissioner Daugherty for a 5% increase, retroactive back to August, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. Is there any more discussion?
No, I think Mr. Coates is doing a great job. I filled out, you saw my comments. there's a lot of transition, both with the board as well as with Pat moving into Mike. There's a lot of big projects going on. I'm well informed. Everything seems to be going smoothly. We've got the water capacity. We've got projects moving forward without a hitch. I think he's doing an excellent job, and I fully support whatever raise and adjustment you feel is warranted.
Okay, all righty. Well, we got a motion and a second on the board for 5% increase retro back to August. If there's no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried unanimously. All right. Now that brings us to our general counselor's report. Mr. Doug?
Yes, we'll have a couple things to report.
Barely hear you.
I do have a couple things to report. So, number one, on PFAS, since you brought the commissioner, since you brought that up earlier, we just have a point here. When the delegation, or when the selection to go forward with the litigation to enter into the settlement was, I thought it was very clear, but I want to get a consensus from the board that we're opting into the settlement. But there is some paperwork, if you will, requirements in the contracts to make it clear. And I'd like to be clear that I believe I already have the authorization to put a written letter in saying that we wish to opt into the settlement. The process is moving forward. We qualify. We have all the basis of it as a water provider. There's not any real complication for us because we don't operate a landfill and we don't operate a water sewer treatment plants, which can make it a little more complicated. If you opt into the settlement, you may have restrictions on what you can do to try to recover on your wastewater plant or your landfills. We don't have that as the authority. So my recommendation for the board is I'm asking you to, by consensus, object if I'm wrong, and I have the written authorization to opt into the settlement, that was the point of our vote last month. But I just want to make that clear. Does anybody think that's not the case?
Board member?
Then I'll be writing a letter to make it absolutely clear that we're opting into the settlement agreement and we'll move forward. And we're hoping by April that we'll have some real progress on this and be able to come back and report to you on what we believe will be the recovery.
Mr. Chairman, I was in the audience in Manatee County when that was being taken up, but that's my understanding, Doug.
Yep.
You got the authorization? Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Just trying to be clear. Second issue is, an update on the master water supply contract. We'll be doing an updated contract to basically bring it forward. It was executed in 2005. I've discussed that a number of times before the board. Don't worry, I'm not getting into detail today. The issue is to give you the update. What we've been waiting for are people to update their demand numbers. The demand numbers are required to be provided to the authority on January 15th of every year. Just because of issues this year, there's been some revised numbers coming out. We're going to have the revised numbers by this year. I think, by our next board meeting, we'll have them all in. And then I'll be coming out with a new updated master water supply contract there's two exhibits to the contract. One is the water demanded by the members, and then the second one basically is how we take those demands and convert those into an allocation for a new project. So those are exhibits B and C. So they change depending on what the water demand is from our customers. So we're getting new water demands in. We'll have those incorporated, and you'll see a new master water supply update contract coming out before the December board, I hope, because I think we've got numbers from Charlotte, and we're getting numbers from Sarasota as well. But then as a reminder, we're not that far from January 15th of 2024. It's imperative that we get the numbers on time because we've got an April timeframe to go forward on this project. We only have a couple board meetings, as you know. So we've got to get those January numbers in from your staffs and from the boards on what the demand numbers are for the next 7 years, starting from 2024. I'll hopefully only be a slight revision at that point. I'll slightly revise exhibits B and C again, recirculate it one more time, and hope to bring the updated master water supply contract back for your review, at the first board meeting after we receive those numbers. Hopefully, maybe even February, but at the latest time would be April. If you don't have any questions, Mike, was there anything else I was supposed to cover?
Not that I know of.
Okay, yep, I think that was it. I know we had a discussion on it, and I want to make sure. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you for being short and sweet. Okay, our executive director.
Mr. Chair, just one item. I'm pleased to announce that Richard Anderson has been promoted to the position of Deputy Director for the agency. Richard will still serve as our Operations Director, so he'll get to wear two hats. Richard spent 16 years in water supply operations at Tampa Bay Water. We lured him away from there in 2010, and he served for the past 13 years with the authority. 3 of those last 3 years as our Director of Operations. I want to point out that under Richard's leadership at the Peace River facility, we have to buy a new trophy case every year for the awards out there, so things have been going very well. Richard's been active in the American Water Works Association. He's held leadership positions, including he was the president of the Florida section of AWWA in 2013. He is the president of the Water Resources Journal from 2014 till now. He won the Fuller Award for AWWA in 2014, and he's currently the General Policy Director for the Florida section of the AWWA. So very active outside. In his new role, he's going to be overseeing the day-to-day activities at the authority, and he serves as an executive resource to all of the departments. So if you need help and I'm not available, call Richard. So thank you. That's all I've got.
Okay. Does this mean that Richards have to start wearing a tie now? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Coates, and congratulations, Richard. It's well deserved. We have a routine status report, and going to start with board member comments. Commissioner Daughter, you're on the right. I'll start with you today.
Always a pleasure to attend, sir. Appreciate it, and enjoy the meeting.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Commissioner Moran, do you have anything you'd like to add? Or?
No, just welcome to Sarasota. It was an easy commute for me.
Yeah. All right. Commissioner Cruz?
No, I'm good.
All right. Just have a couple of announcements. Number one, thanks everyone for coming. Former board member, Mr. Mayo back there, he stayed awake the whole time. So I kept an eye on you the whole time to make sure you didn't nod off. I don't know whose idea it was to move our barbecue to November from the summer, but thank you, whoever's done that, because maybe it won't be quite so hot. November 3rd, 2023, 11:30 a.m., we have our barbecue down at the plant facility across the road. What is that called over there?
It's near the ranch house.
Okay, the ranch house. Okay, at the ranch house. And, well, it was on the other page if I'd have just turned the page over. But and our next authority meeting will be in downtown DeSoto County. So I'll have a short trip next time. And anyway, is there anything else to come before the board this time? If not, we stand adjourned. Thank y'all for coming, and drive safely.